No man will ever marry you again, Marcus said coldly, standing in the doorway as Danielle's suitcase sat on the curb beneath a flickering streetlight. Your damaged goods, he added, his voice flat and final, like he was reading from a script he'd rehearsed. Danielle's breath caught. 7 years. 2 jobs. And this is how it ends? Marcus smirked. Go ahead. Try to prove me wrong. You'll be invisible your whole life. But 3 months later, a man whose name moved Marcus looked at her resume and said, You don't belong on the floor. You belong at the table. And when Marcus saw who was standing beside her at the Manhattan Gala, his face went pale. Please sit back, relax, as we dive fully into this remarkable story. Danielle Brooks woke before dawn, as she always did. The faint glow of Chicago's streetlights slipped through the blinds, cutting soft golden lines across her face. The alarm hadn't even gone off, but her body had learned this rhythm. Up early. Coffee first. Then breakfast for Marcus before he rushed to the office. It was their silent arrangement, the kind of routine that once spoke of love, now just habit. She slipped out of bed quietly, careful not to wake him. Marcus slept facing away from her these days, his back a cold wall that even warmth couldn't cross. When Danielle returned home, she found Marcus's briefcase open on the couch. He had forgotten it in his rush to get back to the office. She picked it up, intending to text him, when her eyes caught something tucked inside. A dinner receipt from the signature room at the 95th. 2 filet mignons. 2 glasses of Cabernet. 1 shared creme brulee. The date was last Thursday, the night he'd told her he was working late. She felt the air shift around her, like someone had opened a window in winter. Her hand trembled as she set the receipt down, her mind racing through excuses, explanations, anything that would make this make sense. But deep down, she already knew. She placed the receipt back exactly where she found it. She wouldn't confront him. Not yet. Part of her wasn't ready for the truth to become real. When Marcus came home later that night, he was unusually quiet. He dropped his keys on the counter and loosened his tie without looking at her. You're still up, he said flatly. I was waiting for you, Danielle said softly. Don't. His voice was sharp. You don't have to wait up like I'm some child coming home from a sleepover. Danielle looked at him, trying to read something, anything, in his tone. Did I do something wrong? Marcus exhaled sharply, running both hands over his face. You're always doing something wrong. You just don't even realize it. Her chest tightened, but she said nothing. She had learned that silence was safer than argument. Yet deep inside, something fragile began to crack. The sense of belonging she'd clung to for 7 years was slipping through her fingers like water. That night, she lay awake beside him. His breathing was steady. Hers wasn't. She wanted to reach out, to hold his hand like she used to when they first moved in together, but her fingers froze midway. She turned away and stared at the dark ceiling, whispering a small prayer into the silence. Lord, help me not lose myself trying to keep someone who's already gone. The breaking point didn't arrive with thunder or drama. It came on an ordinary Tuesday evening when Danielle asked an ordinary question. Will you be home for dinner? She asked gently over the phone. I don't know, Danielle. Stop asking. His voice was ice. She hesitated. I just wanted to know if I should cook. Then don't cook, he cut in sharply. God, you suffocate me. The line went dead. Danielle stood in the kitchen, phone pressed to her chest, her heart thudding in her ears. She didn't cry. Not yet. She just finished setting the table for one, each movement mechanical. An hour later, she heard his car pull into the driveway. Relief rushed through her despite everything. Maybe he'd calmed down. Maybe tonight they could finally talk. But the look on his face as he entered told her otherwise. His jaw was clenched. His eyes blazed with something raw and ugly. What's wrong? She asked softly, taking a step toward him. Marcus tossed a leather portfolio onto the dining table. You want to know what's wrong? This. She frowned. What is it? It's me realizing I made the worst decision of my life marrying you. Danielle flinched as if he'd struck her. Marcus, no. Listen to me, he barked. You drain me. You don't challenge me. You don't inspire me. You just exist. I come home, and it's like walking into silence. Do you know how boring that is? She took a step back, stunned. I thought that's what you wanted. Peace. A home. I wanted a woman, not a servant, he spat. You're always here in those plain clothes, cooking, cleaning, acting like I'm some king you have to serve. I need someone who keeps up with me, Danielle. Someone on my level. Her voice trembled. I thought love was service. Then you thought wrong. He began pacing, fury rising with every word. You're lucky I even stayed this long. No man would put up with someone like you. You think anyone else would want you? Look at yourself. Her hands trembled, but she held her head high. You used to say you loved that I was simple, that I was real. Yeah, well, simple gets old. I've outgrown you. The words pierced deeper than he knew. She turned away, tears spilling freely. So there's someone else, she whispered. Marcus stopped mid-pace. His silence said more than any denial could. Danielle's lips parted, but no sound came. She turned to face him, eyes red but steady. How long? He exhaled roughly. A few months. Maybe more. Does it matter? Her breath caught. The man she'd built her life around was confessing his betrayal like it was the weather. I see, she said quietly. And now what? Now nothing, he said coldly. You're leaving. Danielle blinked in disbelief. Leaving? This is my home too, Marcus. Not anymore. I already packed your things. Her gaze darted to the hallway, and there it was, her suitcase, standing like a verdict against the wall. Marcus, please, her voice broke. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. There's nothing to fix. You can't just throw me away like trash. I already did. His tone was final. You'll be fine. Maybe someone at church will pity you. Danielle's voice broke completely. You're cruel. He shrugged. Honest. Rain began to fall outside. Faint at first, then heavier, drumming against the windows. She stood there trembling, her heart splitting between dignity and despair. Everything she'd believed about their marriage was unraveling in real time. Finally, she reached for her suitcase. The handle was cold beneath her palm. Marcus didn't look at her. He was already scrolling through his phone, as if she'd already disappeared. Lock the door behind you, he said without looking up. She paused at the door, one hand on the knob. I loved you, Marcus, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I really did. He didn't reply. She stepped into the rain, her dress clinging to her body within seconds, mascara bleeding down her cheeks in dark rivers. The world felt cold and wide and merciless. She didn't know where to go. No family left in Chicago. No place that felt like home. Her neighbor, Mrs. Washington, saw her from across the street, standing under her porch light with an umbrella. Danielle? Baby, are you all right? Danielle forced a smile through trembling lips. Yes, ma'am. Just needed some air. Mrs. Washington hesitated, clearly unconvinced. You're drenched, honey. Come inside. Danielle shook her head, already walking backward. Thank you, but I'll be fine. She wasn't fine, but she walked anyway, pulling her suitcase behind her, away from the only home she'd known for 7 years, toward a future that hadn't yet decided what to do with her. Behind her, Marcus closed the curtains and turned off the porch light. The house that once held love was now just bricks and emptiness. Danielle spent that night in a small motel on the outskirts of the city. The bed smelled faintly of bleach and old cigarettes. The air conditioner rattled like it was fighting for its last breath. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her reflection in the cracked mirror. The woman who looked back wasn't familiar. Pale, exhausted, eyes hollow and red-rimmed. But alive. She picked up her phone with shaking hands. No missed calls. No messages. Not even from Marcus to see if she was okay. 7 years of marriage, and he'd erased her in a single night. She lay back on the bed, fully clothed, and stared at the water-stained ceiling. Sleep didn't come. How could it? Her entire life had just collapsed. Instead, she replayed every moment. Every sign she'd ignored. Every excuse she'd made for him. The late nights. The distance. The coldness. She'd been so focused on being the perfect wife that she hadn't noticed she was the only one still trying. Morning came slowly, filtering through the thin motel curtains in weak, gray light. Danielle sat up, her body aching from exhaustion and the cheap mattress. She checked her wallet. $217. Enough for a few more nights if she was careful. After that, she didn't know. She couldn't go to her parents. They were gone, had been for years. No siblings. No family home to run to. Her friends were mostly Marcus's friends, couples they'd socialized with who would inevitably take his side. By noon, she found herself standing outside New Beginnings Women's Shelter in Brooklyn. She'd taken a bus from Chicago overnight using the last of her emergency credit card limit, knowing she needed to get far away from everything that reminded her of Marcus. A volunteer named Sister Ruth greeted her at the door. She was a black woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a warm smile that made Danielle's carefully constructed composure finally crack. "You're safe here, my dear," Sister Ruth said softly, guiding her inside with a gentle hand on her shoulder. Inside were women of all ages, some with children clinging to their legs, some alone like her. The air smelled like coffee and industrial laundry detergent. Voices murmured quietly from different corners. Danielle was shown to a bunk bed in a room she'd share with 3 other women. That night, lying on the thin mattress with a scratchy blanket pulled to her chin, she listened to quiet sobbing from across the room. Pain had many names here, spoken in different accents and languages, but it felt the same in every tongue. And for the first time since Marcus threw her out, Danielle didn't feel completely alone. Marcus Hill stood in his now silent apartment, a glass of bourbon in his hand, looking out at the Chicago skyline. He'd won. He'd freed himself from the dead weight of a woman who couldn't keep up. His phone buzzed. A text from Simone, the woman he'd been seeing for months. The woman who understood ambition, who dressed the part, who made him look good at company events. He smiled and typed back a quick reply. He had no idea that 3 months from now, he would walk into a Manhattan ballroom and see the wife he'd discarded standing beside the most powerful man he'd ever known. He had no idea that his curse, "No man will ever marry you again," would become the very lie that destroyed him. But that story was still being written, and Danielle Brooks, lying in a shelter bed 3 states away, was about to become someone he would never recognize. Days blurred together at New Beginnings Shelter. Danielle volunteered in the kitchen, her hands finding comfort in the familiar rhythm of chopping vegetables and stirring pots. Cooking had always been her meditation, her way of showing love when words failed. Sister Ruth watched her closely, noticing how Danielle never complained, never asked for anything beyond the basics. "You have a gift, child," Sister Ruth said one afternoon, tasting the pasta sauce Danielle had prepared for dinner. "This is restaurant quality." Danielle managed a small smile. "My grandmother taught me. She said food was the language of the soul." "Your grandmother was a wise woman." Sister Ruth paused. "What did you do before you came here?" "I worked," Danielle said quietly. 2 jobs, actually. Administrative assistant during the day, freelance bookkeeping at night. I was saving for. She stopped, realizing how foolish it sounded now. "I was saving for our future. Our business." Marcus always talked about starting something of his own. "And what about your dreams?" The question hung in the air. Danielle realized she didn't have an answer. Somewhere along the way, she'd stopped having dreams of her own. That evening, Danielle's phone buzzed. A number she didn't recognize. Her heart jumped. Maybe it was Marcus, calling to apologize, to say he'd made a terrible mistake. "Hello, Mrs. Hill." A woman's voice, professional and cold. "Yes. This is Jennifer from Marcus Hill's attorney's office. We're preparing divorce paperwork. We'll need you to sign." Danielle hung up. Her hands were shaking so badly, she nearly dropped the phone. He wasn't coming back. There would be no apology, no reconciliation. He was erasing her from his life with the same efficiency he brought to his corporate presentations. Sister Ruth found her in the chapel an hour later, sitting in the last pew, staring at the simple wooden cross on the wall. "He's divorcing me," Danielle whispered. "Through his lawyer. He won't even speak to me himself." Sister Ruth sat beside her, saying nothing at first. Then, softly, "Some people only know how to destroy. They mistake cruelty for strength. I gave him everything. I know you did, baby. But you can't pour from an empty cup forever." The next morning, Sister Ruth approached Danielle with an opportunity. "There's a fundraiser this Saturday. Local businesses donate food, and we serve the community. I was thinking, maybe you could help prepare something special? Show people what you can do." Danielle hesitated. "I don't know if I'm ready." "You're ready," Sister Ruth said firmly. "Trust me on this." Saturday arrived with unexpected sunshine. The community center buzzed with activity, families, volunteers, donors, all coming together. Danielle had prepared her grandmother's signature dish, honey-glazed salmon with roasted vegetables and a lemon herb couscous. Simple, but executed perfectly. She worked quietly in the back, plating food with the same attention to detail she'd once given Marcus's shirts. "Excuse me," a deep voice said. "Did you prepare this salmon?" Danielle looked up to find a tall white man in a tailored gray suit standing at the serving station. He looked out of place among the casual volunteers, yet completely at ease. Yes, sir. I hope it's exceptional, he interrupted, his blue eyes studying her with genuine interest. I've eaten at Michelin-starred restaurants that couldn't execute salmon this well. Where did you train? I didn't, Danielle said honestly. My grandmother taught me. She believed food should tell a story. He extended his hand. Harrison Cole. Danielle froze. She knew that name. Everyone in the business world knew that name. Danielle Brooks, she managed, shaking his hand. Are you a professional chef, Ms. Brooks? No. I'm just volunteering. Harrison pulled out a business card. I'd like to talk to you about an opportunity. We're launching a culinary accelerator program for women entrepreneurs. Based on this meal alone, I think you'd be an excellent candidate. Danielle stared at the card. Harrison Cole, CEO, Cole Industries. Cole Industries. Marcus's company. Marcus worked for this man. Her throat tightened. I appreciate the offer, Mr. Cole, but I'm not in a position to. Think about it, he said gently. Sister Ruth has my contact information. The program covers everything: training, licensing, seed funding. All you need is the talent. And you clearly have that. He walked away, leaving Danielle holding his card with trembling fingers. Sister Ruth appeared at her elbow, smiling knowingly. That's Harrison Cole. He's been our biggest donor for 3 years. Good man. Doesn't just write checks, he actually shows up. Danielle looked down at the card, then across the room where Harrison was speaking with other volunteers, treating everyone with the same respect regardless of their station. This was Marcus's boss, the man who held Marcus's career in his hands. And he'd just offered her a lifeline. That night, lying in her bunk, Danielle couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Harrison's words. All you need is the talent. And you clearly have that. When was the last time someone had seen her as capable, as talented? Marcus had spent years convincing her she was lucky to have him, that she should be grateful for his tolerance. But Harrison Cole had looked at her work, not her story, not her circumstances, just her work, and called it exceptional. She pulled out her phone and looked up the Culinary Accelerator program. It was real. 6 months of intensive training, business development, mentorship from industry leaders. Graduates had gone on to open successful restaurants, catering companies, food trucks. Could she do this? Could she build something of her own? Marcus's voice echoed in her head. No man will ever marry you again. You're damaged goods. But maybe, Danielle thought, maybe she didn't need to be married to be whole. Maybe she just needed to believe in herself the way her grandmother once had. She saved Harrison's number in her phone. Tomorrow, she would call. Danielle called Harrison Cole's office Monday morning, her heart pounding so hard she thought he might hear it through the phone. Cole Industries, how may I direct your call? I'm calling for Mr. Cole. My name is Danielle Brooks. He gave me his card at the shelter fundraiser. Oh yes, Ms. Brooks. Mr. Cole left instructions. Please hold. Classical music filled the line. Danielle paced the shelter's small courtyard, rehearsing what she'd say. Before she could finish her mental script, Harrison's voice came through. Ms. Brooks, I'm glad you called. Mr. Cole, I wanted to thank you for the offer. I've been thinking about the Accelerator program, and I'd like to apply, if the position is still available. It is. Can you come to my office tomorrow? Say 2 p.m.? We'll discuss the details. Yes, I can do that. Excellent. Ask for me at the front desk. And Ms. Brooks, don't be nervous. This is just a conversation. The Cole Industries building towered over Midtown Manhattan like a glass and steel monument to success. Danielle stood across the street, staring up at it, fighting the urge to run. Marcus worked here. Somewhere in that building, on some floor, Marcus Hill was sitting in meetings, making decisions, living the life he'd chosen without her. She took a deep breath and crossed the street. The lobby was all marble and minimalism. The receptionist smiled warmly. Name? Danielle Brooks. I have an appointment with Mr. Cole. 52nd floor. The executive assistant will meet you at the elevator. Danielle's hands were clammy in the elevator. She caught her reflection in the polished doors. She'd borrowed a blazer from the shelter's donation closet, paired it with her nicest blouse and the one pair of dress pants she'd managed to pack when Marcus threw her out. She looked professional, put together. She looked nothing like the broken woman who'd stood in the rain 3 weeks ago. The elevator doors opened to a stunning reception area. A woman in her 40s approached with an outstretched hand. Ms. Brooks? I'm Patricia, Mr. Cole's assistant. He's ready for you. Harrison's office was nothing like she'd expected. No ostentatious displays of wealth, no ego wall of awards. Just clean lines, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, and shelves filled with books. Harrison stood from behind his desk, gesturing to a comfortable seating area by the window. Please sit. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water? Water would be nice. Thank you. He poured 2 glasses from a carafe, then sat across from her. Tell me about yourself, Ms. Brooks. Not your resume, your story. Why do you cook? No one had ever asked her that before. My grandmother raised me after my parents died, Danielle began, the words coming easier than expected. She wasn't wealthy, but she had this way of making every meal feel like a celebration. She taught me that cooking wasn't just about feeding people. It was about caring for them, nourishing them. And what happened to that passion? Danielle met his eyes. I got married. And somewhere along the way, I started cooking to please instead of to create. I stopped experimenting, stopped enjoying it. It became another chore. Harrison nodded slowly. And now I need to remember who I was before I tried to become what someone else wanted. That's honest. He pulled out a folder. The Accelerator program starts in 2 weeks. 6 months, full-time. We provide a stipend for living expenses, all training costs, and seed funding for graduates who present viable business plans. The acceptance rate is about 15%. Danielle's hope deflated. 15%? Normally. But I'm the founder, and I make exceptions for exceptional talent. He slid the folder across. You're in, Ms. Brooks. If you want it. Danielle stared at the folder, afraid to touch it. Why? You barely know me. I know talent when I see it. I also know determination. You've been knocked down, and you're still standing. That's the kind of person who succeeds. Tears pricked her eyes. Thank you. You have no idea what this means. Actually, I do. Harrison's expression softened. My mother raised 3 kids alone after my father left. She cleaned offices at night, including this one, years before I built this company. I learned early that circumstances don't define potential. People do that to themselves, or others do it to them. I prefer to invest in the latter. Danielle left Coal Industries with the enrollment packet, her mind racing with possibilities. She was so lost in thought that she didn't see him until it was too late. Marcus. He was walking toward the building entrance, phone pressed to his ear, laughing at something the person on the other end said. Their eyes met. Marcus stopped mid-stride, his laughter dying. His expression cycled through surprise, confusion, and then something darker, irritation. He lowered his phone. What are you doing here? Danielle clutched the folder to her chest. I had a meeting. A meeting? Here. He looked her up and down, taking in her borrowed blazer, her careful composure. With who? That's not your concern anymore. Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice. Listen, I don't know what game you're playing, but don't embarrass yourself. This is a professional building. You can't just show up. I was invited, Danielle said quietly. And now I'm leaving. Excuse me. She walked past him, head high, even though her legs felt like water. Danielle, he called after her. She didn't turn around. Behind her, she heard him mutter something, then his footsteps retreating into the building. 2 blocks away, Danielle finally let herself breathe. Her hands were shaking, but not from fear. From anger. From power. She'd stood in front of Marcus Hill and hadn't crumbled. Hadn't apologized. Hadn't shrunk herself to make him comfortable. And it felt extraordinary. The Culinary Accelerator program was intense. 16 women, all with different stories, all fighting to build something from nothing. Danielle threw herself into the work with ferocious dedication. She was up before dawn, perfecting techniques, studying business models, learning about food costs and profit margins. The program didn't just teach cooking, it taught entrepreneurship. You've got something special, Chef Martinez told her during week 3. Your food has soul. That's rare. You can teach technique, but you can't teach soul. The other women noticed too. By week 4, they were asking Danielle for advice, watching how she balanced flavors, how she plated with artistic precision. But Danielle stayed humble. She remembered being broken. She remembered the motel room, the shelter, the rain. During week 5, Harrison Cole visited the program. He moved through the training kitchen, tasting dishes, asking questions, genuinely interested in each woman's progress. When he reached Danielle's station, he sampled her pan-seared scallops with butternut squash puree and pomegranate reduction. Exceptional, he said. Have you thought about your business plan yet? I have, actually. Danielle wiped her hands on her apron. Catering. Specialized in intimate events, corporate functions. High quality, personalized menus. I want to hire women from shelters, give them the same opportunity one was given. Harrison's expression shifted. Something like respect crossed his features. That's a strong mission. Purpose-driven businesses tend to succeed because the founder's why is bigger than profit. My grandmother used to say that success without service is just noise. Your grandmother was wise. He paused. I have a proposition. Coal Industries hosts monthly executive dinners. Small groups, usually 15 to 20 people. Very particular clientele. I'd like you to cater the next one. Consider it a trial run. Danielle's pulse quickened. When? 3 weeks. Can you do it? Yes, she said, before doubt could catch up. Good. Patricia will send you the details. He smiled. Don't be nervous, Ms. Brooks. I wouldn't offer if I didn't believe you could deliver. Danielle spent the next 3 weeks preparing obsessively. She tested recipes, refined presentations, created a menu that showcased her skills without being pretentious. Pan-roasted Chilean sea bass with champagne beurre blanc, herb-crusted lamb chops with rosemary juice, individual chocolate soufflés with raspberry coulis. Sister Ruth helped her source ingredients at wholesale prices. The other women in the program volunteered to assist with prep work. The night before the dinner, Danielle couldn't sleep. This wasn't just a catering job. This was her audition for a real future. The executive dining room at Coal Industries was elegant and understated. Danielle arrived 4 hours early with her team, 3 women from the shelter who she'd trained over the past week. They worked in focused silence, prepping stations, checking temperatures, ensuring every detail was perfect. At 6:45 p.m., the guests began arriving. Danielle stayed in the kitchen, managing the flow, ensuring each course left at the right temperature, plated with precision. She could hear murmured conversations, laughter, the clink of wine glasses. Then she heard a voice that made her blood freeze. Marcus. She peered through the service window. There he was, in an expensive suit, laughing with a blonde woman who had her hand on his arm possessively. Simone, presumably. And they were sitting directly in Harrison Cole's line of sight. Danielle's hands trembled. She set down the tongs before she dropped them. You okay? One of her assistants asked. Fine, Danielle lied. Let's send out the first course. The dinner was flawless. Each course received quiet nods of approval, and by the time dessert was served, Danielle heard Harrison's voice rise slightly. Exceptional, as promised. When the last dish was cleared, Harrison appeared in the kitchen doorway. Ms. Brooks, would you come out? I'd like to introduce you to my guests. Danielle's heart stopped. I'm not really. I prefer to stay behind the scenes. Nonsense. You created this. Own it. She had no choice. She removed her apron, smoothed her chef's coat, and followed Harrison into the dining room. All eyes turned to her, including Marcus's. His face went pale, then red. His jaw clenched as recognition, and something like horror flashed across his features. Harrison gestured to Danielle. Everyone, I'd like you to meet Danielle Brooks, the brilliant chef behind tonight's meal. Ms. Brooks is a graduate of our Culinary Accelerator program and is launching her own catering company. I highly recommend you keep her card. Applause rippled through the room. Marcus sat frozen, his hand gripping his wine glass so tightly Danielle thought it might shatter. Ms. Brooks, one executive said, that sea base was extraordinary. Are you taking bookings? I am, Danielle said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. I specialize in intimate events and corporate functions. She handed out business cards, made small talk, accepted compliments with grace. She did not look at Marcus. When she finally returned to the kitchen, her legs nearly gave out. One of her assistants steadied her. Girl, you were amazing out there. Thank you, Danielle whispered. Through the service window, she watched Marcus stand abruptly, making excuses to leave early. Simone followed, looking confused. Harrison caught Danielle's eye across the room and gave her a subtle nod. He knew. Somehow, he knew exactly who Marcus was to her. And he'd just handed her the most powerful moment of her life. Danielle couldn't avoid the truth any longer. Harrison Cole knew. The realization came 2 days after the executive dinner when Patricia called, asking Danielle to meet with Harrison at his office. Nothing to worry about, Patricia assured her. He just wants to discuss future opportunities. But Danielle knew better. She arrived at Coal Industries at 10 a.m., her stomach in knots. Harrison greeted her with his usual professional warmth, gesturing to the seating area. The dinner was a tremendous success, he began. I've already received 4 booking requests for you, all from people who attended. That's wonderful. Thank you. You're welcome. But that's not why I asked you here. He leaned forward slightly. Danielle, I want to be direct with you. I know Marcus Hill is your ex-husband. The words hung in the air. Danielle's throat tightened. How long have you known? Since the day you called my office. Patricia ran a background check, standard procedure for all program applicants. Your divorce filing showed up. And you still accepted me? Why wouldn't I? Harrison's expression was genuine. Your talent has nothing to do with your marriage. Neither does your worth. Danielle blinked back tears. He works for you. He does. Middle management, executive track. Ambitious. Competent. Harrison paused. Also someone I'm currently watching very closely. Why? Because talent isn't the same as character. Marcus Hill is skilled at presentations, politics, networking. But lately, there's been concerning behavior, cutting corners, taking credit for other people's work, arrogance that crosses into liability. Danielle absorbed this. The Marcus she'd married had been ambitious, yes, but ethical. Or so she'd thought. I'm not telling you this to gossip, Harrison continued. I'm telling you because I want you to understand something. Your success has nothing to do with him. You earned your place in that program. You earned that dinner. And whatever you build from here, that's yours. He saw me at the dinner, Danielle said quietly. He didn't expect me to be there. No, I imagine he didn't. Harrison's expression remained neutral. Does that bother you? It should. But honestly, Danielle met his eyes. It felt like freedom. Harrison smiled. Good. That's the right answer. Over the following weeks, Danielle's catering business took off. She booked 3 corporate events, 2 private dinner parties, and a wedding reception. She hired 2 more women from the shelter, training them carefully. Sister Ruth beamed with pride. You're doing it, baby. You're actually doing it. But success brought unexpected complications. Through the industry grapevine, Danielle heard things. Marcus was asking questions about her. Who was funding her business? Who was she sleeping with to get these opportunities? The rumors stung, but they didn't surprise her. Marcus had always needed to control the narrative. Then came the email. From marcus.hill@coalindustries.com. Subject, we need to talk. Danielle, I don't know what you think you're doing, but this needs to stop. Using my company contacts to build your little catering business is unprofessional and frankly embarrassing. If you had any dignity, you'd step back before you humiliate yourself further. You're only getting these opportunities because people pity you. Don't mistake charity for success. Marcus. Danielle read it 3 times, feeling the familiar sting of his words trying to burrow under her skin. Then she deleted it. She didn't respond, didn't defend herself, didn't give him the reaction he wanted. Instead, she cooked. The following week, Harrison invited her to cater a major event, Coal Industries' annual shareholders gala. 200 guests, Manhattan's elite, high-profile investors, and media coverage. This is a big ask, Harrison said. You can say no. I'll do it, Danielle said without hesitation. Marcus will be there. Required attendance for all executives. I know. Harrison studied her. And you're still willing? Mr. Cole, 3 months ago, I was sleeping in a shelter, wondering if I'd ever feel whole again. Now I'm running a business, employing women who need the same chance I got. Marcus doesn't get to take that from me. Not anymore. Then let's make it spectacular. Danielle spent 2 weeks planning the gala menu. She pushed herself creatively, designing a multi-course experience that told a story: rebirth, transformation, resilience. The night of the gala, Danielle arrived 6 hours early. Her team, now 5 women strong, moved with practiced efficiency. As guests began arriving in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos, Danielle watched from the kitchen, her heart steady. She caught a glimpse of Marcus entering with Simone on his arm. He looked confident, successful, completely at ease. Then Harrison appeared beside Danielle in the kitchen. Ready? He asked. Ready. Good. Because after dessert, I'm introducing you to the entire room. And I want you beside me when I do. Danielle's eyes widened. That's not necessary. It absolutely is. You created this. You deserve the recognition. The meal was perfection. Each course elicited murmurs of appreciation. By the time dessert was served, individual passion fruit panna cotta with edible flowers, the room was buzzing. Then Harrison stood, tapping his glass for attention. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the extraordinary chef behind tonight's dining experience. Ms. Danielle Brooks is a graduate of our Culinary Accelerator program, and in just 3 months, she's built a thriving catering business while maintaining an unwavering commitment to excellence and community service. Danielle, would you join me? The room applauded. Danielle walked out of the kitchen, her head high, her chef's coat crisp and white. She stood beside Harrison as cameras flashed. And across the room, Marcus Hill's face drained of all color. The woman he'd called damaged goods was standing beside his billionaire boss, being celebrated in front of everyone who mattered in his professional world. Danielle didn't smile at him, didn't acknowledge him at all. She simply existed in her success, radiant and whole. And that was the most powerful revenge of all. The shareholders' gala was the talk of Manhattan's business elite for days afterward. Social media buzzed with photos of the elegant event, and several food bloggers had already reached out to Danielle for interviews. But it was the photograph that went viral that changed everything. Harrison Cole and Danielle Brooks, standing side by side, him in his impeccable tuxedo, her in her pristine white chef's coat. His hand was on her shoulder in a gesture of professional pride. Her smile was genuine, confident, alive. The caption read, "Cole Industries CEO Harrison Cole celebrates Culinary Accelerator graduate Danielle Brooks at the annual Shareholders Gala." Brooks, who launched her catering company just 3 months ago, is already making waves in Manhattan's competitive food scene. Marcus saw the photo on LinkedIn, then Instagram, then Twitter, then in the business section of the New York Times. Everywhere he looked, there she was. The woman he'd thrown away was being celebrated while he watched from the sidelines. Simone noticed his obsession immediately. "You've been staring at that picture for 20 minutes, she said, her voice sharp with irritation. "Who is she?" Marcus closed his laptop. "Nobody. Just someone from the office." "That's not nobody. That's Harrison Cole. He doesn't take pictures with nobodies." "It's nothing, Simone. Drop it." But Simone wasn't the type to drop anything. She pulled out her phone and did a quick search. It took her less than 5 minutes to find the truth. "Danielle Brooks," she read aloud. "Formerly Danielle Hill. Your ex-wife." Marcus said nothing. "You told me she was a nobody. That she was holding you back. That she was, what did you say? Simple? Boring. She was." "Then explain why she's standing next to one of the most powerful men in New York looking like she belongs there." Marcus stood abruptly. "This conversation is over." "No, it's not." Simone's eyes narrowed. "You're obsessed with her. I can see it. Every time someone mentions that gala, you get this look on your face like you swallowed glass." "I'm not obsessed. I'm just surprised she's managed to fool people into thinking she's talented. Or maybe," Simone said coldly, "she actually is talented, and you were too busy tearing her down to notice." The words hit harder than Marcus wanted to admit. He grabbed his keys and walked out, leaving Simone standing in his apartment, arms crossed, finally seeing what she'd refused to see before. Marcus Hill was still in love with the woman he'd destroyed. Or at least, he was in love with the idea of controlling her. Marcus couldn't help himself. Over the next week, he started showing up places he knew Danielle might be. The coffee shop near the shelter where she still volunteered. The wholesale market where she sourced ingredients. Even the small commercial kitchen she rented in Brooklyn. He never approached her. He just watched, observed, tried to understand how the broken woman he'd left in the rain had transformed into this confident, successful entrepreneur. One afternoon, he saw her training 2 new employees, young women who looked at her with the same admiration he'd once craved for himself. She was patient, encouraging, genuinely invested in their success. When had Danielle become a leader? When had she stopped being the woman who needed him and become someone who didn't need anyone? The confrontation finally came on a Thursday evening. Danielle was leaving her commercial kitchen, exhausted after a 12-hour day of prep work for a weekend wedding. She was loading supplies into her van when she heard his voice. "Danielle." She froze, turned slowly. Marcus stood 10 feet away, hands in his pockets, trying to look casual. But his eyes betrayed him. They were hungry, desperate, searching. "What are you doing here, Marcus?" "I wanted to talk." "We have nothing to talk about. Please. Just 5 minutes." Danielle checked her watch, then sighed. "You have 3. Marcus stepped closer. "I've been thinking a lot about us. About what happened. What happened is that you threw me out of our home and told me no man would ever want me again. What exactly is there to think about? I was angry. I said things I didn't mean. You meant every word. Danielle's voice was steady, calm. You meant it when you called me simple. When you said I embarrassed you. When you told me I should be grateful you stayed as long as you did. You meant all of it, Marcus. That's who you are. That's not fair. Fair. Danielle laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to talk about fair? You had an affair, filed for divorce through your lawyer, and tried to destroy what little confidence I had left. And now you're upset because I didn't crumble? Because I actually built something without you. Marcus's jaw clenched. This isn't about your business. Then what is it about? He struggled to find the words. I didn't expect you to move on so fast. Fast. Danielle's eyes flashed. Marcus, you moved on while we were still married. I just finally caught up. Is something going on between you and Harrison Cole? There it was. The real reason for this conversation. Danielle smiled, and it was the saddest smile Marcus had ever seen. That's what this is about. You think I'm sleeping with him? You can't imagine that someone might value me for my talent, my work, my character? It has to be something else. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Danielle picked up the last box and placed it in her van. Harrison Cole saw something in me that you never did. He saw potential. He saw worth. And he gave me an opportunity to prove it. That's it. There's no scandal, no affair, no secret relationship. Just a man who invests in people instead of tearing them down. Danielle, my 3 minutes are up. She closed the van doors. Don't come here again, Marcus. Don't show up at my kitchen. Don't watch me from across the street like I haven't noticed. Move on. I have. She climbed into the driver's seat and started the engine. Marcus stood in the parking lot, watching her taillights disappear into the night, finally understanding what he'd lost. Not a servant. Not a convenience. Not someone to make him look good. He'd lost a partner. A woman of substance. Someone who would have stood beside him through anything if only he'd valued her. And now she was standing beside someone else, someone who recognized her worth. That night, Marcus sat alone in his apartment. Simone had left him 2 days ago, tired of competing with a ghost. His promotion, the one he'd sacrificed everything for, suddenly felt hollow. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through old photos. There was Danielle on their wedding day, smiling with her whole heart. Danielle cooking breakfast in their first apartment. Danielle asleep on the couch after working a double shift so he could afford business school. When had he stopped seeing her? When had ambition turned into cruelty? He knew the answer. He'd stopped seeing her the moment she stopped serving his ego. The moment her quiet strength made him feel ordinary instead of exceptional. Marcus deleted the photos one by one. Some things, once broken, couldn't be fixed. And some people, once freed, would never come back. Meanwhile, across the city, Danielle sat in her small apartment. No longer a shelter bed, but a real home she'd rented with her first major profits. Sister Ruth had helped her find it, and the other women from the program had helped her move in. She opened her laptop and looked at her calendar. 3 weddings next month. 2 corporate events. A private dinner party for a tech CEO who'd flown in from Silicon Valley specifically to try her food. Her phone buzzed. A text from Harrison. Board meeting next week. They want to discuss expanding the Accelerator program. Your success story is inspiring donors. Would you be willing to speak? No pressure. Danielle smiled and typed back. I'd be honored. She set her phone down and looked around her apartment. It wasn't fancy, but it was hers. Every piece of furniture, every dish, every small decoration, she'd earned it. Marcus had sworn no man would ever marry her again, as if marriage was the only measure of a woman's worth. But Danielle had discovered something more valuable than any ring. She'd found herself. And that, she realized, was the greatest revenge of all. Not hurting him, not proving him wrong, simply living well, simply being whole, simply being free. The board meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. Danielle arrived at Cole Industries 30 minutes early, dressed in a tailored navy suit that Sister Ruth had helped her pick out. Patricia greeted her warmly. Ms. Brooks, you look wonderful. Harrison is finishing up a call, but he'll be right with you. Can I get you anything? I'm fine, thank you. Danielle sat in the waiting area, her presentation notes in hand. Harrison had asked her to share her journey, from shelter resident to business owner, to help the board understand the real-world impact of their investment. She wasn't nervous. Not anymore. She'd learned over the past months that her story had power, not because it was unique, but because it was universal. Everyone had been knocked down. Not everyone got back up. Harrison emerged from his office, smiling. Danielle, thank you for coming. Ready? Ready. They walked down a quiet corridor to the executive boardroom. Through the glass walls, Danielle could see 12 people seated around a massive table. Mostly men, a few women, all in expensive suits, all radiating authority. Harrison opened the door. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce Danielle Brooks, founder of Brooks Catering and one of our most successful Accelerator graduates. Polite applause. Curious faces. Danielle took her seat at the head of the table beside Harrison and began. 6 months ago, I was sleeping in a women's shelter in Brooklyn. I had $200 to my name, no family, no home, and an ex-husband who told me I'd never amount to anything. The room went quiet. She had their attention. Today, I run a catering business that's booked solid for the next 3 months. I employ 5 women, all of whom came from situations similar to mine. And last month, I made more money than I ever did working 2 jobs while married. She clicked to the next slide, photos of her team, her kitchen, her events. This program didn't just teach me how to cook professionally. It taught me that my worth wasn't tied to someone else's opinion of me. It taught me business skills, financial literacy, and most importantly, it taught me to believe in myself again. One board member, an older woman with silver hair, leaned forward. Ms. Brooks, what would you say to critics who argue that charity programs create dependency rather than independence? Danielle met her eyes. I'd say this wasn't charity. This was investment. Harrison didn't give me a handout. He gave me tools, training, and an opportunity. What I built from there was my own. That's not dependency. That's empowerment. Another board member spoke up. What's your 5-year plan? Expansion. I want to open a restaurant that serves as a training ground for women transitioning out of shelters. A place where they can learn, earn, and build their own futures. I'm already working with investors and looking at locations. Impressed nods around the table. Harrison smiled slightly. This was going even better than he'd hoped. After the presentation, several board members approached Danielle with questions and business cards. One offered to connect her with a commercial real estate agent. Another mentioned knowing a food critic at the Times. As the room emptied, Harrison touched her elbow gently. You were remarkable. Truly. Thank you for giving me the platform. You earned it. He paused. There's something else I wanted to discuss. Walk with me. They left the boardroom and headed toward Harrison's office. The halls were quiet, mid-morning lull. The board approved a significant expansion of the Accelerator program, Harrison said. Triple the current capacity. But we need someone to help run it. Someone who understands what these women are going through. Someone they can relate to and trust. Danielle's heart quickened. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a partnership. You'd maintain your catering business, but you'd also serve as the program director. Mentor the women. Share your expertise. Help shape their curriculum. Harrison, I don't have management experience. You're already managing 5 employees and running a successful business. You have exactly the experience we need. He stopped walking and turned to face her. I'm not asking you to give up your company. I'm asking you to help other women build theirs. Danielle felt tears sting her eyes. When do I start? Next month. If you accept. I accept. That evening, Danielle called Sister Ruth to share the news. Baby, that's wonderful. Sister Ruth's joy radiated through the phone. You're going to change so many lives. Sister Ruth, I need to ask you something. Danielle took a deep breath. When I first came to the shelter, did you see this in me? Did you know I could do this? Sister Ruth was quiet for a moment. Honey, I saw a woman who'd been broken but not destroyed. The rest? That was always in you. You just needed to remember it was there. After they hung up, Danielle sat on her small balcony, looking out at the Brooklyn skyline. The city lights twinkled like stars, each one representing someone's dream, someone's hustle, someone's hope. Her phone buzzed. An email notification. From marcus.hill@coalindustries.com. Subject, congratulations. Danielle, I heard about your new role with the Accelerator program. Congratulations. You deserve it. I know I have no right to say this, but I'm proud of you. I'm also sorry. For everything. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know. Marcus. Danielle read it twice. A few months ago, this email would have meant everything. She would have clung to those words like a lifeline, desperate for his validation. Now, they meant nothing. She didn't respond. Didn't delete it. Simply closed the email and set her phone down. Marcus's opinion, positive or negative, no longer had power over her. The next morning, Danielle received a text from an unknown number. "This is Simone. We need to talk. It's about Marcus." Danielle stared at the message. Simone, the woman Marcus had left her for. Against her better judgment, she replied, "I don't think that's a good idea. Please, just coffee. 30 minutes. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important." Danielle hesitated, then typed, "Tomorrow, 2 p.m., the cafe on 5th and Main. If you're late, I'm leaving. Thank you." Danielle almost didn't go. She stood outside the cafe for 5 minutes, debating whether this was a trap, a manipulation, a waste of time. But curiosity won. Simone was already inside, sitting at a corner table, looking nothing like Danielle expected. No designer clothes. No perfect makeup. Just a tired-looking woman nursing a coffee. Danielle sat down across from her. "You have 30 minutes." Simone looked up, and Danielle saw something surprising in her eyes: regret. "I'm sorry," Simone said quietly, "for my part in what happened to you. I knew Marcus was married when we started seeing each other. I told myself it didn't matter, that if he was willing to cheat, the marriage must have been over anyway. But that was just me justifying my own behavior." Danielle said nothing. Waited. "He's obsessed with you," Simone continued. "He talks about you constantly. Compares me to you. Watches your social media. Drives past your business. I thought I could compete, but..." She laughed bitterly. "You can't compete with someone who's become an obsession. Why are you telling me this?" "Because he's spiraling. And I think he's about to do something stupid." Danielle's blood ran cold. "What kind of stupid?" "I don't know exactly. But he's been talking about fixing things and making it right. He's been asking questions about your investors, your contracts, your business relationships. It feels like he's looking for something to use against you." "Against me? What?" Simone met her eyes. "Because you're winning. And Marcus can't stand to lose." After Simone left, Danielle sat in the cafe for another hour, processing. Marcus was planning something. Some way to undermine her success, to prove she didn't deserve it, to reclaim the power he'd lost when she stopped needing him. She pulled out her phone and called Harrison. "Danielle, everything okay? I need to talk to you. About Marcus. I think there might be a problem. Come to my office. Now." 30 minutes later, Danielle sat in Harrison's office, explaining everything Simone had told her. Harrison's expression grew darker with each word. "I've been monitoring Marcus's behavior for weeks," he said finally. "There have been complaints. Inappropriate questions about budgets. Attempts to access files he has no business seeing. I was building a case, but if he's targeting you specifically..." He picked up his phone. "I'm calling security and HR. We need to lock down your information immediately." "Harrison, I don't want to cause trouble." "You're not causing anything. Marcus is." His voice was firm. "And if he's using company resources to harass you, that's grounds for immediate termination." Danielle felt a strange mixture of fear and relief. Marcus was imploding. And this time, she wasn't going to be collateral damage. This time, she had protection, resources, people who believed her. This time, she had power. Harrison Cole didn't make rash decisions. He'd built a billion-dollar empire by being strategic, methodical, and ruthlessly fair. But when it came to protecting people who couldn't protect themselves, he moved with surgical precision. Within 24 hours of Danielle's warning, Harrison had assembled a team: his head of HR, the company's chief legal counsel, and the director of IT security. "I want a complete audit of Marcus Hill's electronic activity for the past 6 months," Harrison said, his tone leaving no room for discussion. "Every email, every file access, every database query. If he's been using company resources inappropriately, I want documentation." The IT director nodded. "I'll have a preliminary report by tomorrow morning. Make it tonight." At 11 p.m., Harrison sat in his office reviewing the findings. What he saw made his jaw tighten. Marcus had accessed Danielle's Accelerator program file 17 times, far beyond what his role required. He'd pulled financial records, personal information, even her shelter intake forms. He'd forwarded confidential information to his personal email. He'd searched for vendor contracts, looking for anything that might suggest impropriety. But it was the email thread that sealed Marcus's fate. Marcus had been corresponding with a competitor of Harrison's, a venture capitalist known for hostile takeovers and dirty tactics. The messages were carefully worded, but the intent was clear. Marcus was offering inside information in exchange for help exposing what he called nepotistic practices in Harrison's Accelerator program. He was trying to destroy Danielle's credibility by suggesting she'd received special treatment because of a romantic relationship with Harrison. It was a lie, but it was the kind of lie that, if planted in the right media outlets, could damage both their reputations. Harrison made 2 phone calls. First, to his legal team, draft a termination letter and prepare for potential litigation. Second, to Danielle, don't worry. This ends tomorrow. Marcus Hill arrived at work the next morning with a coffee in hand and a spring in his step. He'd spent weeks building his case, gathering evidence, preparing his exposé. By Friday, he'd leak everything to that business reporter from Bloomberg. By next week, Danielle's reputation would be in ruins, and Harrison Cole would be facing questions about ethics violations. Marcus would be there to pick up the pieces, maybe even position himself as a whistleblower, a champion of integrity. He swiped his security badge at the elevator. Access denied. Marcus frowned. Tried again. Access denied. Excuse me, Mr. Hill. A security guard approached. I need you to come with me. What's this about? My badge isn't working. Please come with me, sir. Marcus was escorted to a small conference room on the executive floor. Inside sat Harrison Cole, the head of HR, and a woman Marcus didn't recognize but whose presence screamed attorney. Harrison didn't stand, didn't offer a handshake, simply gestured to the empty chair across from him. Sit down, Marcus. Marcus's confident smile faltered. What's going on? The HR director slid a folder across the table. Mr. Hill, we've conducted an investigation into your activities over the past 6 months. What we've found constitutes multiple violations of company policy, breach of confidentiality agreements, and potential criminal misconduct. Marcus's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. You accessed employee files without authorization, Harrison said, his voice cold and measured. You forwarded confidential company information to your personal email and to external parties. You attempted to sabotage a company program and damage the reputation of a program graduate. Shall I continue? This is ridiculous. I was doing due diligence. You were stalking your ex-wife and attempting to destroy her career out of jealousy. Harrison leaned forward. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? That I wouldn't protect my employees? The attorney spoke up. Mr. Hill, you have 2 options. You can resign immediately, sign a non-disclosure agreement, and accept a severance package that's frankly more generous than you deserve. Or we can terminate you for cause, which will make it very difficult for you to find employment elsewhere. Marcus's hands were shaking. You can't do this. I'll sue. With what evidence? Harrison asked calmly. We have documentation of everything. Timestamps, email logs, witness statements. You signed an employment contract that explicitly forbids this behavior. You have no case. The HR director placed a pen and 2 documents in front of Marcus. The resignation letter or the termination notice. Your choice. You have 5 minutes to decide. Marcus stared at the papers, his mind racing. How had this happened? He was supposed to be the one in control. He was supposed to win. I need to call my lawyer, he said weakly. You can call anyone you want, the attorney said. But these documents don't change. And the longer you wait, the more embarrassing this becomes. Security is already prepared to escort you out. Whether you leave as a resignation or a termination is up to you. Marcus picked up the pen with trembling hands. He signed the resignation letter. Effective immediately, Harrison said, standing. Security will escort you to your desk to collect personal items. You'll surrender your badge, laptop, and phone. Any company property in your possession will be returned within 48 hours, or we'll add theft to the list of violations. Marcus looked up at Harrison, desperate. She's not what you think. Danielle, she's using you. No, Marcus. You're the one who used her. For 7 years, you took advantage of a good woman's love and loyalty. And when she stopped serving your ego, you tried to destroy her. Harrison's expression was granite. Danielle Brooks is one of the most talented, hard-working, genuine people I've ever met. She earned every opportunity she received. Your inability to see that says everything about you and nothing about her. Security appeared at the door. Escort Mr. Hill to his desk, then out of the building. He's no longer employed here. Marcus's walk of shame was witnessed by dozens of colleagues. Whispers followed him through the halls. By the time he reached the lobby, his phone was already buzzing with messages from confused coworkers. He stood on the sidewalk outside Cole Industries, a cardboard box of personal items in his arms, and for the first time in his adult life, Marcus Hill had no plan. No job. No Simone. No Danielle. No future that looked anything like what he'd envisioned. He'd climbed so high, sacrificed so much, hurt so many people. And for what? To end up alone on a sidewalk with a box full of corporate tchotchkes and a reputation in tatters? Harrison called Danielle that afternoon. It's done. Marcus resigned this morning. He's no longer with the company, and he's legally bound not to contact you or speak publicly about you or the Accelerator program. Danielle exhaled slowly. Thank you. You don't need to thank me. I was protecting my company and my employees. Marcus made his choices. He's facing the consequences. Part of me feels like I should feel bad for him, Danielle admitted. That's because you're a good person. But feeling bad for someone doesn't mean you have to let them hurt you. Marcus had every opportunity to make different choices. He chose cruelty. He chose ego. Now he's choosing to live with the results. After they hung up, Danielle sat quietly in her kitchen. She didn't feel triumphant. She didn't feel vindicated. She just felt free. The shadow that had been following her for months, the fear that Marcus would somehow sabotage her success, was gone. She could breathe again. That evening, Sister Ruth came by with takeout and a bottle of sparkling cider. I heard, she said simply. How are you feeling? Honestly, relieved, sad, grateful, all of it at once. Sister Ruth squeezed her hand. That's called healing, baby. It's messy and complicated, and it doesn't happen in a straight line. But it happens. They ate Chinese food on Danielle's tiny balcony, watching the sun set over Brooklyn. You know what I realized? Danielle said. Marcus spent so much energy trying to convince me I was worthless that he never stopped to build anything real for himself. His whole identity was about being better than other people. When I stopped being beneath him, he had nothing left. Some people climb by lifting others up, Sister Ruth said. Some people climb by pushing others down. Marcus was the second type. And eventually, there's nobody left to push. Danielle raised her glass. To climbing the right way. Sister Ruth clinked her glass. To climbing the right way. And in that moment, Danielle understood something profound. Revenge wasn't about watching someone fall. It was about rising so high that their fall no longer mattered. 6 months later, Danielle stood in front of a brick building in Brooklyn, keys in hand, her heart full of something she'd almost forgotten. Pure, uncomplicated joy. The sign above the door read, Brooks Table, a restaurant with purpose. Behind her, a small crowd had gathered. Sister Ruth, the women from her catering team, graduates from the Accelerator program, Harrison Cole, Patricia, even Chef Martinez, and several board members. I can't believe this is real, Danielle whispered. Harrison smiled. Believe it. You built this. The restaurant had been Danielle's dream for months. A full-service dining establishment that would serve as both a business and a training ground. Women from shelters and transitional housing could work here, learn here, build careers here. The menu would rotate based on what the apprentice chefs created, giving them real-world experience in a supportive environment. It had taken months of planning, fundraising, permit applications, and sleepless nights. But today, opening day, it was real. Danielle unlocked the door and stepped inside. The dining room was small but beautiful. Exposed brick walls, warm lighting, tables made from reclaimed wood, an open kitchen where diners could watch the chefs work. On the wall near the entrance, a framed quote. Success without service is just noise. Danielle's grandmother. She would be so proud of you, Sister Ruth said, tears in her eyes. I hope so. The soft opening was scheduled for 6 p.m. 50 guests, invitation only. Danielle had hand-selected the menu, dishes that told her story. Honey-glazed salmon, the dish that had caught Harrison's attention. Herb-crusted lamb, from the executive dinner where she'd first faced Marcus. Passion fruit panna cotta, from the shareholders' gala. Each dish was a chapter in her journey from broken to whole. At 5:30, Danielle gathered her team in the kitchen. 5 women, all at different stages of their own journeys. I want you to know something, Danielle said, looking each of them in the eye. You're not here because I feel sorry for you. You're here because you're talented, hardworking, and deserving of this opportunity. What you do with it is up to you. But I believe in you. The same way someone once believed in me. One of the younger women, Carmen, spoke up. What if we mess up? Then we learn and do better next time. That's how this works. That's how life works. Danielle smiled. We're not aiming for perfection. We're aiming for progress. Now let's show these people what we can do. The soft opening was a triumph. Guests raved about every course. The food blogger from Brooklyn Magazine took so many photos that Danielle lost count. A restaurant critic from the Village Voice asked for a card and promised to return for a full review. Harrison sat at a corner table with two board members, and Danielle watched as they nodded approvingly, clearly impressed. Around 8 p.m., as the main courses were being served, Danielle stepped out of the kitchen to greet guests. She moved from table to table, thanking people for coming, answering questions about the restaurant's mission. When she reached Harrison's table, he stood and pulled out a chair. Sit. Just for a minute. Danielle sat, suddenly aware of how exhausted she was. This is remarkable, Danielle, one of the board members said. Truly, the food is exceptional, but it's the atmosphere, the purpose behind it. That's what makes it special. Thank you. That means everything. Harrison leaned in slightly. I have something to tell you. The board voted this morning to make the Accelerator program permanent and expand it to 5 other cities: Boston, Chicago, Atlanta, Seattle, and Los Angeles. We want you to oversee the expansion as national director. Danielle's eyes widened. National director? You'd travel, train new program directors, ensure quality and consistency. It's a significant role, and it's yours if you want it. Danielle looked around her restaurant, at her team working in the kitchen, at Sister Ruth beaming from a nearby table. Can I think about it? Of course. Take your time. After the last guest left and the kitchen was cleaned, Danielle sat alone at the bar, a glass of wine in hand, letting the reality of the day sink in. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Congratulations on the restaurant. I saw the photos online. You did it, Danielle. You really did it. Marcus. Danielle stared at the message for a long moment. A year ago, this would have meant everything. 6 months ago, it would have made her angry. 3 months ago, it would have felt like validation. Now, it just felt irrelevant. She didn't respond, didn't block the number, simply set the phone down and took a sip of wine. Marcus's opinion, positive or negative, no longer had the power to touch her. The door chimed. Danielle looked up to see Harrison stepping back inside. Forgot my coat, he said, grabbing it from the back of his chair. Then he paused. You okay? More than okay. Danielle smiled. I was just thinking about how far I've come. Harrison sat down beside her. You know what I admire most about you? You didn't just survive what happened. You transformed it into purpose. A lot of people would have stayed bitter, focused on revenge. You focused on building. I wanted to prove him wrong, Danielle admitted. At first, I wanted Marcus to see what he'd lost, to regret what he'd done. And now I realize it was never about him. It was about me remembering who I was before I let someone else define me. She turned to face Harrison. Thank you for seeing something in me when I couldn't see it myself. I didn't see something that wasn't there, Danielle. I just held up a mirror. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. About the national director position, Danielle said finally, I want to do it, but I need to make sure this restaurant stays true to its mission. I can't abandon the women I've committed to. We'll make it work. You hire a general manager you trust, you travel as needed, and you build something bigger than one location. You can help women in 5 cities instead of 1. Danielle nodded slowly. Then yes, I'll do it. Harrison raised his water glass. To new beginnings. Danielle clinked hers against his. To new beginnings. A year later, Danielle stood on a stage at the National Women's Entrepreneurship Conference in San Francisco. 500 women filled the auditorium, all of them building businesses, chasing dreams, fighting to define success on their own terms. The moderator smiled warmly. Danielle Brooks, your story has inspired thousands of women across the country. What would you say to someone who's currently in the place you were 2 years ago, broken, hopeless, told they'll never amount to anything? Danielle took a breath, remembering the rain, the shelter, the fear. I'd say this. The person who told you that you're worthless is wrong. They're not wrong because they're cruel, though they might be. They're wrong because your worth was never theirs to determine. It was always yours. The audience was silent, hanging on every word. 2 years ago, my ex-husband swore that no man would ever marry me again. He said it like a curse, like he was condemning me to a life of loneliness and failure. And for a while, I believed him. I thought marriage, validation from a man, approval from someone else. That was the measure of my worth. Danielle smiled. But I was wrong. Because I didn't need marriage to be whole. I didn't need someone else's approval to matter. I just needed to remember that I was enough. Exactly as I was. Broken pieces and all. She paused, letting the words settle. So if you're in that dark place right now, if someone has convinced you that you're damaged, unworthy, too much, or not enough, I want you to know something. They're lying. And the moment you stop believing their lies is the moment your real life begins. The applause started small, then grew into a standing ovation. After the conference, Danielle sat in her hotel room, looking out at the San Francisco skyline. Her phone showed notifications from the restaurant. Carmen had been promoted to sous chef. The Chicago Accelerator program had just graduated its first class. Her catering company had been booked for a governor's inaugural dinner. She pulled up Marcus's last text, the one she'd never responded to. Without hesitation, she deleted it. Deleted his contact. Deleted every trace of him from her phone. Not out of anger. Not out of bitterness. Simply because she didn't need to carry him anymore. 3 days later, Danielle returned to Brooklyn. She walked into Brooke's table during the dinner rush, watching her team work in perfect synchronization. The dining room was full. Laughter and conversation filled the air. Sister Ruth sat at her usual corner table, and when she saw Danielle, she waved her over. How was San Francisco? Amazing. Overwhelming. Perfect. You look different. Lighter. Danielle smiled. I feel different. I finally let go of the last piece of him. The part that was still waiting for an apology that will never come, for acknowledgement that doesn't matter. And how does that feel? Like freedom. Sister Ruth squeezed her hand. Your grandmother would be so proud. Not because you built a successful business or became some big-shot director, but because you found yourself again. That's the real victory. Danielle looked around her restaurant, at the women cooking in the kitchen, the guests enjoying their meals, the purpose and joy filling every corner. Marcus had sworn no man would ever marry her again, but he'd been asking the wrong question all along. The question was never whether someone would choose her. The question was whether she would choose herself. And she had. Every single day, she chose herself. And that made all the difference.